Hey, what's going on, everybody? Global 5 here. We're doing our Nijigasaki anime deck update video. This is what we're doing in lieu of set reviews, just because it's only me right now working on the channel. So instead of going through all the cards, we're simply going to discuss the cards that I am considering updating my 8 standby Nijigasaki deck with. Um, the deck is really fun. It's one of my favorite decks of last year that came out. So I'm excited to get some new fun things to play with in it. Now, Nijigasaki has a busted deck with a gate finisher at the top end. That's not going to be this deck. So I'm sure there are gameplay videos, and if not deck profiles yet, then very soon that will be up there for that type of deck. This is basically a 12 standby deck. So, yeah, if you're looking for the Kanata build, unfortunately, this is not it. But if you do want to stick around and see what the 12 standby deck idea cards that I have, definitely stick around for the video and we look forward to it. Do want to shout out Gilgastorm, who will be having Nijigasaki singles at some point soon. This is being recorded on June 2nd, hopefully uploaded June 3rd, 2022. So hopefully he will have singles on his website at some point near then. So you definitely want to check him out. Link will be in the description below. But before we go into the new cards that we're going to be looking at, I don't think the channel has ever seen my Nijigasaki 8 standby deck. So this was the build I was running before the new set came out. This is what I used to qualify for the online nationals this year, which I didn't play at nationals because I don't really give too much credence to online tournaments, unfortunately. So this was just qualify with a heavy deck, play a wifey deck in the tournament. Those that do not know what this deck does, it's basically just trying to go through the deck as fast as possible with double triggers that make your characters super huge on offense. That 1-0 I on the second row, second in is literally busted. And, playing a lot of soul triggers in the deck so that way you can, even though you're slamming standbys, you're likely going to get a bunch of extra damage in there. A lot of the things that are going to change in this deck are some of the level 0 lineup cards, and then I think we actually end up adding a couple of soul triggers just based on my initial layout. I'm still waiting for my playset to come in. Hopefully by next week I can start testing in full. But without further ado, we're going to go right into the cards here from the new set that might make their way into slots in this deck. So the first one we have here is a Karin card. Level 0, on play from hand, you can mill the top 2 cards of your deck. It gains 1,000 power for each music character, put it into the graveyard for the turn. And then it's a clean cut for music characters. Clean cut is when the battle opponent this comes reversed, choose one of your other music characters, rest it, and move it to a back row empty slot. This is attacking in at probably 4K, and then being able to plus you by moving one of your other characters to the back row is very good. I don't know if this will make it into the deck as we are playing coin flips and free runners, but this is a plussing 0 that could make its way in, so we have it here on the list. I love clean cuts. We're very aggressive up here in the Northeast, and being able to try field and then plus yourself by moving character to the back row helps with that strategy. The next card we're looking at potentially ending up in the deck is this Ayumu. It's assist, 500 power in front, and then you can pay 1, send this to memory to look at the top 3 cards, choose a music character, add it to hand, put the rest to waiting room. This probably won't make it into the deck because of how busted the 1-0 I is. However, if you're looking to compress with memory, it also digs so you can fill your graveyard while adding to your hand. It's a card that could end up in your deck, particularly if you don't have access to the eye, which I think is a rare. So if you don't have any of the old cards, this is a card that could go in and help bump your board 500 power in front. which your 1/1 eyes are only 6k before any soul trigger bumps. So the 500 power makes it 65, which helps out, considering a typical 1/1 is 7500 power. Then the next card here is a 2/2 Setsuna that says if the standby in the center here is in the climax zone, this has standby trigger in all zones. And then if all your characters are music, which your deck is probably going to be all music, this gains 4000 power. So this sits at 10.5k power if it's on the board. And then what makes it really good is it basically bumps your standby count by 3 or 4, depending how many copies you're playing, in all zones. So when you're double triggering with your 1/1 or 2/2 eyes, and you hit this, and you've got the Setsuna standby in your climax zone, you'll basically be able to act as if you just triggered a climax, but instead it's a clean stock instead. So I'm looking forward to testing this. I bought foils of the climax and of the character just because I think it's going to be really nutty to stand by as many times as this likely does with all the double triggers. So this will likely take the alpaca, not the alpaca, the lion slots, lion from Kimono Friends, which was what the 3/2 Ayumu did. The one upside to the 3/2 Ayumu was it was global 1500 if it was in the front row, which this doesn't have. So as a potential addition, I'm looking at this U card. If the U Brainstorm is in clock, which the U Brainstorm is here in the center of the screen, it gets -1 level in hand, so you can early play this at level 2. It's global 1500 in the back row to all other music characters, and when it's placed on stage from hand, you can look at up to the top 2 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 red card, choose up to 1 blue card, and up to 1 yellow card, show them to your opponent, and then send them the stock in any order. Obviously, you won't have all 3 colors because you're only looking at 2 cards, but if you hit appropriately, this becomes a basically free level 3 from your hand. If you recall the deck list, there is a fair amount of blue, there's a fair amount of yellow, and a fair amount of red. So this card being free, when you look at 2 cards with 3 color options, has a fairly decent upside of potentially being so. The question is whether you're going to play the U Brainstorm in the deck or not. My current list is not playing the U Brainstorm. We've already skipped over where that would be as it kind of went in rarity order for this video. And yeah, so I mean, if you're going to play the U Brainstorm, that's perfectly fine. However, I'm still staying with the Ayumu Brainstorm because it has on climax placement. You can look at the top 2 cards of your deck and then rearrange them. There's a card at the end of the slideshow that I think is going to be fairly interesting to do with that Brainstorm. So therefore, I haven't swapped over to the U Brainstorm. It's also fairly good, so that way you can put a standby as the second trigger down. So that way you can know your attack order a little easier than, blindly attacking with a 0/0, hitting your standby on the first trigger. The next card here is just a reprint. If you look at the deck list at the beginning of the video, there's a PR up top which has the first year girls in it, and it has the exact same text as this uncommon. So when this is placed from hand to stage, if the opponent has 1 or fewer characters on their center stage, you may send a cost 0 character there to the bottom of the opponent's deck. And then this has a coin flip effect. So at the beginning of the opponent's draw step, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's level 1 or higher, you can bounce this back to your hand. Very good profile. A lot of the bottom deck cards have been seeing a lot of play in recent sets. Mushoku Tensei plays it. This deck plays it. Ruby plays it. And then this can be able to bounce to your hand is really good because then it becomes hand encore fodder. So once it's already bottom decked, your opponent's center runner, got your attack in, bounce it back to your hand, and then it sits there until you're ready to use encore on your 1/1 eyes, 2/2 eyes, etc. So it's really nice that they reprinted the profile. A lot of my buddies didn't have the PR. I sent out the extra copies I had to those that told me. But for those that didn't have access to it, now have access to an uncommon in the set. So that's really good. We like to see people have access to all card profiles. Reprints are good. Next card here is a Setsuna. This is the interesting card that works with the Ayumu Brainstorm. It has two effects. The first one is the relevant one for the deck I'm considering. It says that when this card becomes reversed, reveal the top card of your deck. If the level of the real card is equal to or greater than the card's battle opponent level, you may reverse that card. So this card can essentially reverse any level character. So the play pattern would be something like play standby at your character, look at the top two cards of your deck, and then if you're trying to reverse a level 2, put a level 2 or higher card as the second card down, attack with this card first, become reversed, reveal top, level 2 or higher card, reverse the 2/2. I think it's a really interesting card to try and play with and see if it actually works in theory. I'm probably going to play 2 copies to start with, determine if the card's worth playing at that point, and then see whether one card is worth it or not. You can also standby this out, and maybe sometimes you'll get reverses. This is a heavy standby deck, so your cards are going to be higher level than like a standard 1k1 deck. So sometimes you'll just end up getting the reverses off of it anyway. The second effect is that when this is placed to waiting room from the stage, if you have 2 or less memory, you can send a 3/2 Setsuna, which is here in the center, to memory. I don't know what the 3/2 Setsuna does. I read it last week when I kind of mulled the idea of the deck over. And then we had Springfest and then post-tournament nonsense. So I don't know what it does offhand. I know it has a way to come out of memory. So if you are going to play like a heavy memory deck, you'll include both of these in there. You'll include the Ayumu from the beginning of this video. But I have yet to see anybody build Nijigasaki with that sort of idea in mind. But it might be in a deck that we go through. When I built Nijigasaki through the first set, I ran through 6 or 8 different deck ideas before I literally just settled on the 8 standby because nothing else was as good as that deck. Here with this set, we tend to have a bunch of different options, which is really nice. And I look forward to playing around and finding out what deck I settle on as like my pet deck, in addition to my 12 standby deck. And I gotta try that Kanta finisher, because if you have not seen that card in action, she does some work. The next card we have here is a Climax Swapper. The biggest complaint I had about the old Nijigasaki deck would be I got my Setsunas in my hand and I've got the Ayumu standby, and there was no way that I could swap that into a Setsuna standby. We now have that option. Early game, you play this down and you swap into a 2/2 Setsuna standby instead of the 3/2, so that way you can try to generate a whole bunch of standbys. So this card's going to be very good. Whether 1 or 2 copies make it in, I'm not sure yet, but it's definitely a card that should see play, particularly if you're going with the 2/2 Setsuna standby, because you can just try to loop so many standbys and then you just build your board and it's going to be a good day for you. I got really lazy with the translations on this one. It's a 2/1 memory kick counter, so it's got a 3k backup. You're playing it for the memory kick. 3k is also not insignificant. Your board is going to be probably 11.5 or 12k, depending on which global you've stood by out. So being able to pump up to 15.5 with memory kick can help take care of the Rushia that's not summoned, take care of most other early plays, potentially take care of the 2/2 early play healer, depending on how many 2/1 supports they put down with that. I think she gets up to 16.5 with 2 of them. But yeah, this, very good profile. It also turns off end of combat climax combos, so Quince, particularly Quince, is the one that you need to worry about, I think, in the current meta. You'll memory kick it and they won't get the end of combat climax combo. So, good card to run, particularly if your deck is big enough to make use of the 3k power bump. This is the last card in the slideshow. I do have one other honorary mention for afterwards, but this card was just very interesting to me. It is a common, so it might be overlooked, but it's something that I want to test, and particularly the non-standby decks. So we'll just go through this real quick here. When it's placed from hand to stage, if you have 2 or more music characters, you can draw 1 card. If you do, discard 1 card. Not bad. Filtering, help get to climaxes, get rid of things out of your hand. Very good effect. The one issue with the old Niji deck was you didn't really have too much ditch outs. This will give you a ditch out. The other effect is that when it's placed from hand to stage, you may discard a music character. If you do, you choose one of your opponent's characters and send it to memory. Then at the beginning of the encore step, your opponent returns that character to the stage in any slot. So, with Mushoku Tensei, you can banish one of their back rows to the memory, which will not only reduce whatever buffs that character is giving, so like the global 1k that's in the back row, the 2k assist in front back row, that stuff goes away. They lose that power. Additionally, the 2/2s gain power from the back row, so they'll become even smaller. This card might potentially be good in the non-standby deck because it'll allow you to get over things easier, whereas the standby deck can sort of combat Mushoku on the power level. I don't know how the discard music character cost in those decks will affect its playability. Whereas in standby, you discard a music character, it's probably something you want to be standbying out anyway. So it does have synergy in the 8 standby, 12 standby decks because of that. So, just a really interesting card. That's why I wanted to highlight it. Whether it makes it into the final deck, testing will tell, because this is a profile I don't think I've seen. At least not something that is readily played. But yeah, we always, try to look through the comments, see if there's anything worthwhile, and I think we might have potentially found an interesting card at the very least in this eye. The last card that I don't have a slide for, it's almost amazing that I made a slide for the memory kick counter, but at least I felt like that's a worthwhile card to talk about. Now, the card that I'm considering playing may not actually get played, because whether it's actually good or not remains to be seen through testing. But there is a 1/1 3k counter with a soul trigger in this set. Now, as we said, the main point of the deck is to hit soul triggers for power, to just get really large. And I think that 3k is a really good power level. So, theoretically your eyes could be 8/5, 9/5 on defense, depending on how the standbys work in your favor or not. If they are, a 3k counter at level 1 is really good. The problem with the counter is it goes to the bottom of your deck. So you have to be aware of your deck state to know whether it going to the bottom of your deck could be detrimental to you because of extra damage, or whether it going to the bottom of your deck is fine because you're going to trigger it, which is a soul trigger, and then it basically pumps your board. So the 1/1 counter might be a trap. It might be fine. Testing will tell. And the current deck doesn't play any level 1 counters, mostly because level 1 2k counters don't have a soul trigger. That's why I like not to play them. But in this deck, with having a soul trigger, with being 3k, it might be worth playing. So yeah, that is it. That is my selection of cards that could potentially end up in my formerly 8 standby, now 12 standby Nijigasaki deck. Let me know in the comments below whether you thought any of these cards were really interesting, whether there's stuff that I missed that I should be playing in my standby deck, and at what ratios. And, as always, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all in the next one.